welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is entrepreneur and Abraham Hicks fan Louis D'Souza. This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And I'm especially happy to be continuing to be on the upward path after reporting to you all last Friday that, yes, I've been down with the COVID. Not over it yet, still testing positive, but I've been able to hold my energy pretty well. I don't go out. I mean, you're not going to go out.
Well,
you don't want to cause problems. What's up, Louis?
I'm hearing you twice. Are you also hearing it twice?
I'm not. Austin, are you hearing any kind of a loop going on?
I am not.
You're not.
Okay. Let me try we'll just go do a live test here. So ladies and gentlemen, just hold that thought for just a second. I'm going to mute Austin. Now, are you still hearing the loop, Louis?
Yes.
You're still hearing it. So.
But it's like a delay. It's like you're saying everything twice. It's about a 3-second delay or something.
I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on because at
Okay,
this point it's just you and me, so I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Let me disconnect the audio and reconnect it.
I'm going to turn Austin's mic back on since you weren't hearing any difference there. This is not the way we normally start a show, Austin. I can promise you, this is not the normal.
Well, that's okay. Life is all about troubleshooting, right?
Well, it's about troubleshooting, but it's also about how you deal with it, you know?
Exactly.
Because life throws curveballs, right? It's going to happen. That's part
all
of
the time.
Right. So are you going to hit the curve or are you going to strike out each time? It's really up to you.
I like that.
Yeah. So, Louis, any difference? Have you figured anything out there?
No, I'm going to have to do a reboot, so I'll catch up with you guys later.
Okay, so drop in, drop out. Yep, we'll catch you in a few. All right. So, Austin Wheeler is, obviously, he's our guest for today, in case you hadn't quite figured that part out. He's basically, he's working with career-oriented fathers. That's like his orientation these days. And there's a whole story about how he ended up there, because he actually used to work with kids, and it kind of evolved into this. So I've already screwed up the technology. I'm not going to screw up the story too. So Austin, I'm going to let you tell the story. First of all, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us today. And
thanks for having me.
How you doing there in Illinois, central part of the country?
I'm doing pretty good. We've got overcast weather, real neutral temperatures, so it's relatively nice out for this time of year.
Yeah, that's always the word this time of year, right? Relatively nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to be cautious.
That's the way the Midwest works.
The Midwest, the Northeast, yeah, most of the country actually, I think, works that way. But yes,
yep, praying for weather,
especially in your section of the country because it's starting to really line up the cold weather. But anyway, tell us your story. Give us an idea of where you came from and how you've gotten to where you are now.
Yeah, so the dad's program kind of like you said did stem from me doing about 6 years of coaching with youths. So the main thing I saw with that and the main reason why I got into the dad's coaching line or the working with fathers and parent coaching line was I got to a point where I realized, okay, I can spend an hour, I can spend 2 hours with this individual 8-year-old, right? But if he's going home to eat Doritos and Ho-Hos and play Fortnite up until 3:00 in the morning, then we're still not going to get the kind of results that we need. Sure. So a lot of it came from the first few kids that I ended up coaching and having conversations with individual parents of those kids about, hey, you can't feed them all of this junk food and expect growth. Now, here we're going to fast forward a few years. So we're going to skip 4 years ahead of the time post me having this conversation with dad. This kid walks up to me at a football game where I'm unknowingly now coaching his younger brother, right? So now I'm seeing the whole family without even knowing. But he walks up to me and he says, "Hey, Austin, what's going on? How have you been? I haven't seen you in forever." And I'm like, who is this person talking to me? I don't know you. I've never met you. Who is this person talking to me? And it took me a while. So I had to stare him directly in his eyes and recognize his eyes actually from the last time I had seen him. So the last time I had seen him, he was maybe 4'7", 65 pounds, something like that. Small kid. This time I see him, he's about 6'3", 250 pounds of all muscle. Oh. Right. So that's why when he walked up to me and goes, "Hey, Austin," I'm like, who are you?
Yeah, right.
Who is this? He's got a full beard now and the whole 9 yards. So to me, that was just kind of like a wake up call immediately, right? That's telling me, okay, I can spend all day spinning my wheels with these kids, but if I don't take my time to make sure they've got the right systems at home, as far as a more consistent basis, then we're going to keep running into the same issues. So a lot of it was seeing him and then starting to pay attention to the other kids that I used to coach that I was seeing nowadays. And that's where it all started is all of my kids are now bigger than me, and that's kind of where it all comes from.
Yeah. And, well, not only that, you discovered, well, I don't know, maybe discovered isn't the right word. You noticed, let's put it that way. You noticed that truly the most important way to connect with a kid is through the parents. That's a big deal. Because, 100%. I mean, we as human beings, in the cultures that we live in, particularly the Western cultures today, are very oriented toward, the challenges that are often involved with the fact that different families there are different kind of family units than there used to be. There are single family units. There are various mixed family units. I mean, there's like all different kinds of combinations. And yet that doesn't stop the parents from having an influence on the kids in a big, big way.
Exactly.
So that was really part of your observation, right? That like, if you want to help kids who need help, you got to start there.
Exactly. Is that I can spend all of these hours coaching, right? But at the end of the day, if I notice dad has a certain set of habits, or I notice mom has a certain set of habits, the likelihood that no matter what kind of coaching I do, that child ends up having those same habits is very, very high. So for me, it was like, okay, if I want to have the impact that I want to have, which is changing these kids' lives forever, instead of for one football season, I need to be very, very conscious about kind of what things I look to change, right? So instead of looking to change me telling a 7-year-old, hey, I need you to stop eating Jolly Ranchers all the time and pick up an orange and an apple, it's much easier to have a conversation with a 27-year-old parent instead of the 7-year-old child, right? And say, hey, when we're in the store, we can't buy 3 boxes of fruit by the foot and 2.5 boxes of Jolly Ranchers and 3 packs of Gushers. We need to be eating more whole, healthy foods.
And that's a new kind of message for many kids, especially the kids who are growing up in these unusual family situations.
That is the truth.
So that makes a challenge. Now we're going to actually throw a little bit of a curve to you today, because one of the topics we talk about here is not so much about fathers and sons and fathers and daughters, but just in terms of how we think here on this program about people of all ages as individuals, and what can or cannot be done to help people to become better individuals by teaching them their own power as individuals. So this to me is going to create an interesting conversation, because you learned one particular thing that played out well for you and that you learned a lot from. We have a little bit of a different take on it. I'm going to be kind of curious to see how all this plays out. That's why I thought this would be a really cool conversation today. So, I don't know. Are you at all familiar with the concept law of attraction?
Very basically.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't you tell us just from your perspective, just from what little you understand, how do you see it?
So I see law of attraction typically as, right, and I use this actually in my coaching business a lot, which is one of the things that kind of made you guys stand out to me, right? I see, so if we want to give a specific example of fitness and all of that, we see in fitness a lot of times people will see something online and it's saying, hey, that person got that result by doing that thing. And it's like, hey, great. Okay. You are a different person than that person. Your plan is probably a different plan than that person's plan. So to me, law of attraction is being willing to kind of take a step back, right? And say, instead of me forcing this to work out, if this is not what's going to be best for me, it's kind of taking a step back and saying, okay, where am I most useful? What's my biggest benefit in a certain sense? So you're not just forcing yourself to do things based on social media. You're making decisions based on what's the best for you.
Okay, so that gives us an idea of where you're coming from. Now, I'm going to start the conversation, and Louis will probably jump in about any moment here, but I'm going to start the conversation here by saying, or by asking a question. You spend a significant amount of time encouraging people to deal with their externals that are messing them up. I'm wondering to what degree you encourage them to go inside themselves, to basically learn to tap into that inner part of themselves, to learn and basically discover their own internal power.
Yes. So that's where it all starts. And that's kind of one of the most fun parts of, I think, the process in terms of getting people to really truly understand their internal power. So I think the way I notice that, particularly as a trainer, is I'll have people come in and they start very kind of hunched shoulder and bent over and really, really quiet. And as we work together, they become more confident, start talking back, making jokes and all of these things. And it's like, okay, now we're moving forward. Now we're getting to the point of, I can send you off for you to be the best version of you and not feel like we need to watch you or anything like that.
Okay. So you recognized and try to start to implement the idea of developing that internal conversation, that internal self-talk, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. And then encouraging kids to change that. Tell us a little bit more about that. What else have you tried to do along those same lines?
Along the same lines of encouraging
the children particularly.
So when I was a youth coach, it was just making sure I'm saying encouraging words and trying to put them in scenarios where they're going to be as successful as possible. So looking at a kid's individual talents and the things that I know they do well, and me saying, okay, how am I going to put them in a situation that, one, I know is going to be difficult for them, right? Because if I've noticed with kids, if it's too easy of a win, it doesn't really boost their confidence at all. It doesn't provide that, I guess, that encouraging boost of, hey, you can do this. Whereas when you put them in a situation that's, I guess, difficult, and coach them through that difficult situation, they start to gain a lot more confidence within themselves. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. So kind of, I guess, teaching them how to problem solve with the kid is a lot more encouraging to the younger generation, I've noticed, than just encouraging them.
And then to follow up on the way you differentiate on the question, what have you done with the parents to help them, encourage them to go within?
A lot of what I do with parents is reminding them of their why. Is why did we start all of this? Why did you start trying to either lose weight or get stronger or get healthier? Because I've noticed a lot of people kind of start with something more superficial. That's like, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to fit into a size smaller than I am now. Mm-hmm. As we have more of those conversations, you start to hear things like, oh, well, I took my kids to Disney World and I couldn't be on my feet long enough for us to get through a line in the ride. Mm. And so once you find those things, a lot of the encouragement and motivation kind of that you need just really stops. I think once we find the I don't want to say the actual why, right? But once we find that kind of more internal trigger, it's kind of like you said earlier, with looking within yourself as opposed to external factors. Once we find that external or internal factor, motivation isn't something, or encouragement isn't something that I typically struggle with from that point specifically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. If it's like, hey, I want to be there for my daughter's wedding, now I don't have to yell at you to go get on the treadmill or get on the stair stepper, right? It's you know why we're doing this. So then it just becomes, okay, let's look through the details. Let's figure out what we need to do to get you where you want to be. And that's a lot easier than me trying to yell and motivate you every day.
So Louis, I guess the echo problem is now gone, which I'm very glad of. So thanks for doing the reboot there. Now, I think you can probably see, at least to some degree, why I thought this would be an interesting conversation, because I kind of imagined Austin being one of the people who comes into your sauna at your club there, and you're having a conversation with him. And I figured, well, this is kind of like a way to, it's sort of like a prefab way to do that kind of a conversation. Because Austin, literally, like 80% of Louis' stories begin, I was in the sauna the other day, and then it leads into this really story about somebody he met and he introduced to the law of attraction, or he did, he had a conversation of some kind. And I thought, boy, it'd be really great if we could just hear one of those conversations. So this is about as close as I can think of to getting to that conversation. So Louis, what do you think?
So Walt, I was at home yesterday.
Just to mix things up.
And a Jehovah's Witness knocks on the door. And the first question they asked me is, do you believe there can be peace on earth? I said, definitely not. And if you believe that, you don't understand how the universe works, or how life works at all. And they're looking at me like, I said to them, do you know anybody who hasn't experienced negativity? Do you? Has anybody not experienced what they don't want? And they're like, no. So I said to them, I believe that when you know what you don't want, you have a much better idea of what you do want. And when you start focusing more on what you do want, less on what you don't want, your life becomes just generally happier. And they're looking at me. It's like, oh, okay. I hadn't really thought of it that way. So I said, I've come to this place where I really appreciate negativity as an expansion point, and it helps you grow and expand. And I believe that's why we came here, is to expand and grow. And they're looking at me, and I say, if it wasn't for the negativity, I wouldn't expand and grow. So I'm so grateful for it. And they're looking at me.
That is.
And they're saying, it's a really good conversation. I said, I'm actually on a call at the moment, but, I'd love to have a longer chat with you. I said, yeah, sure. They shook my hand very genuinely, shared each other's names, etc. And they said they promised to come back next week. And I said, absolutely great. Come inside and we'll have some tea and we'll have a good chat.
In case you haven't figured this out, Austin, he loves to mess with people's minds when they have a very strong religious viewpoint.
I'm not messing with people's minds. I'm sharing my truth.
He does it very nicely.
Curious, asking questions. Trying to figure out the opposing side.
They gave me this little leaflet. You must read this section of it. I think you'll enjoy it. I said, sure, I'll have a good look at it.
Have you read it yet?
But one day. I said to them that, I'm trying to understand the reason why I'm on this planet from the age of 8 consciously. And, I've come to a few understandings along the way. I love sharing them. They just look at me like, okay. Most people, they say, don't have a very clear idea of what they think, or what they believe about the subject. I said, yes, this is true.
And that's really what the core of it is. People not really having a clear idea of what they really believe deep inside. I mean, that's a wonderful story, by the way, and I love that. But that's really what's at the core of it. What do you actually deeply believe inside?
And then I mentioned to them, and Jesus was very clear about it as well. He said in the Bible, there will be war on this planet till time immemorial. He really understood what I just said to you about the importance of negativity. Like, okay. I said he was a very wise man, but there's a lot of unwise people who have taken his message and interpreted it in weird, wonderful ways.
So when you hear Austin's story, Louis, I'm curious to know, if he had been coming into the sauna, even though we're not doing the sauna right now, but if he had come into the sauna where you were and you'd heard him tell his story, how would you respond to him at that point?
Well, he hasn't really told his story. He's given me an idea of how he coaches. So I would say to Austin, tell me, why did you get to where you were? I'd like to hear that story. I want to know about you. You know, I want to know what got you to the place where you're at now, and what triggered you, and what were the life experiences you got. And, you know, that's the story. That's the juice of it that I like digging into.
Okay. Yeah. So, I think we were talking about this during your reboot. Basically, I was actually a youth coach before I coached parents. So a lot of me coaching parents comes from having an understanding that I can only do so much with an 8-year-old that's not making grocery decisions or decisions on when the family wakes up and those sorts of things. So it comes from an experience in coaching youths and understanding that if I don't put systems in play for the parents, the kids aren't gonna reap the benefits.
Mm-hmm. So, have you ever watched the TV program Caesar Milan's Dog Whisperer?
Yes.
You have? Yes.
Yes.
I've always been amazed. I sat and I watched a few episodes and I was highly impressed with this guy. And I was looking at what he did, and then I started to realize he spends 2 minutes or 5 minutes with a dog, sorts him out, and then he spends the next hour with the parents, with the owners of the dog.
and it's one of
you know,
those
you
things.
have to laugh, you know.
If you're not sorting out
the apple doesn't fall far from the
dog.
tree comes to mind. Yeah, so working with the parents, absolutely. Because, you know, I brought up my kids in a weird and wonderful way. I don't have very many rules. Basically, you help out in the house or you live outside. That's one rule.
I like it.
And then there's a few set things that they do, and there's not a lot. When that's done, it's your own time. You know, do your homework, don't do your homework, I don't care, but I'm not going to explain to the teacher why you did or didn't do it. I'm not going to send you to bed at any time. You go to bed whenever you want. But you will explain to the teacher if you're tired and you're late and you get up and you go to school. You'll explain to them, I'm not going to do anything about that. So, you know, you can sleep over with friends. Just tell me, you know, you can have as many friends as you want to sleep over. I don't care. You know, my house is an open house. You come, go, you do what you want. So, you know, what's amazed me is how my daughter comes to me. She explains to me all her friends, the interrelations of what's going on. She asks me about her art, how it's going, how it's working. You know, do you like this? Do you like that? And I introduce her to different artists like Salvador Dali and things like that. And we've got this great relationship going on. The teachers love her. They're actually begging her to join their course for the next year and things like that. And, you know, she's not the brightest kid in the class or anything, but, you know, they love her. They love her. But,
Okay.
my youngest one's getting a lot of good comments and things like that as well. Because I've got an 8-year-old and a 14. So, you know, a very open relationship. Everything goes, flows. My wife, of course, is a big part of it because she's very practical and down to earth, and I'm very up in the air with my mind and thoughts and all the rest of it. So I bring my part in, she brings her part in. It works out to be a great balance. So, you know, a lot of things start with even the parents choosing each other well. And then from there, you know, with a mature kind of relationship as opposed to, and just fell in love and all the rest of it, you know, love comes and goes. But do you know what the highest divorce rate is? It's something like 80% in Liechtenstein. And in America, it's about 50 or 40%. Guess what the lowest country in the world is for divorce rate?
I have no idea.
It's about 3%, and it's in India, where you've got billions of people. And they have arranged marriages there.
I wondered about that before, that arranged marriage rates are higher in terms of long-term relationships than choosing a partner.
So what it's kind of hinting at is that the parents are able to make a slightly better decision, or much better decision, actually looking at the stats, than you know, individuals going out and just falling in love with this person in the pub and whatever, you know. But it was interesting. The person who brought this to my attention, he didn't do that. He actually went out and chose his wife. And he went back to the family and they said, oh, but she's not this caste or that caste, the same as you and all the rest of it. He said, I'm not marrying her caste. And what her parents don't do this or that. I'm not marrying her parents. And then, you know, the way he said it is, I was wise enough or let's say, I don't like using the word, but spiritually advanced enough to choose my own one. So he was mature. You could use the word mature. He was mature enough to choose his own wife, or even more mature than his parents in many respects, because he is a very advanced individual, extremely advanced, at least in my opinion. So it was interesting. It's really based on the level of awareness when you're choosing your partner, from what I'm kind of getting about it now. And, I only got, my first relationship was at the age of 27. First time I kissed a girl.
Okay.
I wanted to kiss a girl many times before that. Okay. 27 years. No, not quite 27, but you know what I mean? I always wanted a girlfriend, but, I was a very, very serious kid. And, if I saw a girl taking any interest in me, I'd have this good conversation with her. And in no time I'd be saying, what do you believe? Why do you believe that? And she'd just run away, just see the dust.
Right off the deep end.
That's right. So
Start of the
I was a very
conversation.
intense person, so I managed to frighten away many women. But when I came to Europe, there was an interesting dynamic that went on. And the dynamic was I didn't have to be in the box that everybody thought I should be in South Africa, because I was born in South Africa and I left and came to UK. Because when I came out here, I felt I could be anything, because nobody expected anything from me or even knew me. So there was none of these boxes which your parents, your friends, etc. put you in and expect you to stay there. But once you leave a country and go to a new one and you're starting off for everything afresh, or in America you probably go to another city, it's probably equal to it. You really get that freedom to expand. And I found that a great liberation is being able to drop that whole apple doesn't fall far from the tree kind of thing, being able to, nobody was expecting anything from me and didn't know me, so I could just be whoever I wanted to be and move forward. And I did massively grow and move forward when I moved to Europe. It was a fantastic time.
Now, I definitely noticed that happens as well. So with some of the kids' parents that I work with, and it's like, as soon as you get somebody to stop forcing that kid into a box, I noticed that kind of is the main thing for what you just said I 100% am right on board with. I agree with it all the way, right? I think sometimes parents may get a little obsessed with, I know this is the best thing for you, and not pay attention enough to what.
Something like screen time, screaming time. Instead of saying,
I know what's
let's go
the
out
best
and play,
for you.
let's go do and do this, let's do this, let's go do that. They're now saying, stop, don't. Aren't they?
Right. So one thing I've enjoyed doing recently with that is you basically can just ask a parent, hey, what's your child's favorite sport, or what's your child's favorite food, favorite color, favorite anything. And it's like, if you notice that parent going, and they start looking around and doing this and that, it's like, okay, maybe you're paying a little bit too much attention to you. And I think if more people kind of had that, so the open relationship you talked about with your daughter and her friends, and being able to communicate freely with everybody, I think if a lot of more parents implemented something like that, right? I'm not saying you let your kids do whatever you want, but you're communicating about everything. We would have less of these circumstances of parents not being able to see the other side of the story, in a sense.
I was speaking to one of my 8-year-old daughter's friend's mother about this subject, and it was quite interesting. She said, oh, but if I did that to if all the parents did that to all the teenagers she teaches at the moment, there would be absolute, mayhem. And I said, yes, there will be, because I've done this from birth.
Well, one other thing
and if you just suddenly take away all the rules, they're going to go apeshit. They're going to play with that absolutely massively. But if you've given them the responsibility from a young age, I mean, my daughter used to have to climb on the desktop, climb on the washing machine to get onto the the worktop to go and get herself some bread and get some jam and butter and put it on herself at a very young age, like 4 or 5 years old, they were doing that. So I've got them, if a kid can do something for themselves, I don't do it. So they get to take this more and more responsibility from a very young age, and I respect them. I'm looking at them as old souls. When my children were born, I was like, oh my God, this is like my one daughter was born, and it's just incredible love. My older one, it's just, Walt knows her because she's been on the show. She's just love. It's just the way it is. And then the other one, when she was born, she looked into my eyes. Both of them were born in the toilet downstairs. And she looked into my eyes immediately from birth, opened her eyes, looked into them, and this thought got channeled into my brain, which says, you know what to do, I know what to do, let's go do it. Completely different to my other daughter, but, it's just really interesting how there's a completely different dynamic with them both.
Yeah, you've come to appreciate your daughters for who they are individually. You are not the person at all. I think Austin's already got this figured out, but you're not the kind of person at all who says, well, this daughter is like every daughter, so I have to assume she's going to be like every daughter, and I'm going to behave like she is like every daughter. I'm going to treat her like every daughter, and by God, she's going to be like every daughter.
Mm-hmm. Boxing them, because they will tend to rise to your level of expectation.
Or lower, either way.
Either way.
Yeah.
So that is one interesting thing that I kind of wanted to bring up. So when I was in college, I studied psychology. All of my research was based in parental factors, right? Parental behavioral factors that will influence drug abuse issues as an adult. The number one thing we found.
Okay, good. My daughter wants to come on and say something.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see. Happy Halloween.
Hello, happy Halloween. How you doing?
Good night.
So I guess the number one thing that we found with looking at what parental factors contribute to drug abuse issues as an adult was level of autonomy that parents actually gave their children. So the tighter of a hold that we noticed certain parents kept, the farther outside of the box those kids would go.
The less connection between them as well, isn't it?
Exactly. So basically directly correlating the amount of strictness, right, that a certain parent would have with kind of the amount that a kid would kind of go wild once those restrictions weren't applied. And I thought it was very interesting that the more control you apply, the less control you have. And I think if more people were willing to take your approach, and kind of like I said, it's not just letting your kids do whatever they want to, but being able to have.
It pretty much is, but because they've built in that responsibility understanding, they don't take it over the wall. So it's almost is literally allow them to do whatever they want. Almost. I mean,
right.
I don't have
to.
So everybody says, when they're a teenager, they're really difficult and all the rest of it. I said, not at all, because they've got no rules to push against. There's the basic rule, help out in the house, which they don't do, and they only had to bring this up once with only the younger one, not even the older one. I said to her, you stay outside. You don't want to help. You live outside. Went into the door, closed it on her, and she was like, wrong with you. I said, and I did it once, and that was it, never again, and I don't think I'll ever have to do it again. And it was just the point that, if you live under this roof, I just expect a little bit of help, and that's it. And the rest of the time is yours. You can creatively do whatever you want. And, in the beginning, she was just watching the tablet all the time. So I just left her. Now she wants to play with the dolls. She wants to play with what's that gooey stuff that they have?
Slime.
She wants to, the slime, endlessly slime.
Mm-hmm.
They want to play with designing things, with painting, drawing. But I had to let her go through that whole thing of just sitting there watching this tablet. And she still does watch tablet now and again. But far less and less and less of choice and personal choice. And I love it, I'm just really enjoying it. But, I had to go through the phase of letting her spend hours and hours and hours in front of it, and it was okay. I knew it was going to be a phase that, if you do anything too much, even too many YouTube videos, you eventually get bored. You just get bored.
Yeah. It's just not fun anymore.
But let the cycle run its course and then, go forward. So it's just really interesting watching it, My daughter will come to me. We've got the ability to go to a swimming pool any hour of the day or night. She'll come to me at like 8 o'clock at night. Let's go swimming. So I say, okay, let's go and jump in the car and go swimming. So we'll pop go and have a lovely swim and sauna and then come back and she'll fall asleep dead to the world until next morning where she wakes up fresh and off she goes, So, you just got very, very few rules. And, Isabel, of course, I didn't really expect this from her, but, there's no resistance in 13. There's no fighting. There's no pushing and pulling. It just doesn't exist in our house at all. And we've got the ability now to just use pure plain logic, Oh, well, if you don't do that, then that doesn't happen. If you do that, that happens, And it's just simple. It's just basically simple logic. There's no shouting and pushing and pulling and kicking and screaming.
Right.
All of that's out the window,
And I think
sometimes some of us get frustrated, but it dies in no time, And I often show them I get frustrated and angry, but I show them also instantly how quickly I get rid of it. Never lasts. I'll get angry for 10 seconds or 20 seconds, and then it's over. But I do it again and again, and I show them I can get angry. I do get angry, and I want you to be able to express yourself as well, but just don't do it for a long time. And that's the whole law of attraction. It's based on focus more where you want, less on where you don't want. And it's the whole very, very simple thing, because if you suspend 14 seconds on focusing on what you want, you bring in 2,000 man-hours of work to help you. You're drawing from the universe thoughts and vibrations that are similar to what you're thinking about, and then it's going to help you manifest and do and achieve what you want to achieve. So it's going to bring all those forces in alignment. You're going to get the right people at the right time and all the rest of it. If you can just focus for 14 seconds, and it's not easy to focus on one subject for 14 seconds. You may think so, but it's not. And man needs to learn to focus. Just focusing on where you want to go, just focusing, learning to get that focus going is more important. That's why I don't rip them off the tablet, because they're focused. And a lot of people just say, "Oh, screen time, bad, bad, bad." I'm saying, "Oh, aren't they focused? Isn't it nice? Can you see how focused they are?"
Right.
Then you start really getting what you're trying to achieve, and you start getting them to focus in the right. You don't even get them to focus anywhere. You're not even trying to do anything. You start really sitting back and saying, "I'm just a guardian. I'm here to give them some home, food, and that's it. I'm not even allowed to give them ideas." But I can be an example of the way I live, and they can pick up from that. But, ultimately you just sit there, and let them be whatever they're going to be. And, being comfortable with allowing them to achieve that, making their own mistakes. I'm very happy when they make their own mistakes. Every time they do it. "Oh, Dad, it was really hard at school." I said, "Isn't that great?" "Oh, you and your philosophy again." So now what did you learn from that? "Oh, I don't like so-and-so." "Isn't that great? Now you know what you don't like, and what do you like?" "Oh, I would love it if they were kinder to me or nicer to me." I said, "Oh, isn't that great? Isn't that nice? Can you focus on that for a while? What does that look like?" "Oh, when you go to school, they greet you by name. Isn't that nice?" And so you go down that line of just getting them to focus more on what they want, less on what they don't want. And it's such a simple philosophy, isn't it? It's not complicated. Anybody can use it. Anybody can do it.
And then that's what I tell people all the time. It's like, hey, if we plan this out and we really put some effort into making this happen as opposed to hoping it's going to happen, this is going to be a much easier process than you think it is, right? Whether that's fitness or building a podcast or anything like that. I've noticed it's
See,
like, hey,
Austin, I can't use the word. What did you use? What was the word you used? If you have a bit of,
I'm not sure what word you were tripping on there.
I'm tripping on the one that sounded like work, hard work.
hard work.
You heard it
So,
differently from me. I'm not sure what you heard.
yeah. Now, there was a way you were describing it, which sounds like, you really got to go out there and do it, and it sounds a little bit efforting. So,
Oh, I know what you're saying. Okay.
Okay.
So, I just go in there and say, wouldn't it be nice if we have fun with this today? And I remove the word work or hard or discipline or any of that. I remove all of that. So wouldn't it be great to go and you get them to playfully focus. Hocus pocus focus. Okay.
Yeah, right. I
So,
think people underestimate playful focus.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's something I've used over the years of having people tell me, oh, well, I can't lose weight because I've got an 8-year-old that I need to watch and I don't have the time. It's like, let's get creative. Go outside, pick up 2 sticks, hand one to your 8-year-old and say, let's play Star Wars. I'll bet you get a workout in without you feeling like you're doing a workout. Your 8-year-old's not going to notice you guys are working out. Nobody's going to notice you're working out at that point, but you're still going to get all of the physical benefits of doing that task. And I love that idea of, it's like, hey, this doesn't all have to be kind of doom and gloom and sadness, right? We can have fun and still be productive. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is a lot of people think it's hard work bringing up kids. It isn't. It's one of the easiest things in any case. And as soon as they're able to lift and move things from one place to another, you've now got to serve them.
I like that.
My 8-year-old, you set the table. I mean, she was 7 years old. No, she's 7 years old. When she was 6 years old, she was already setting the table. So, she had already got in one of her little chores was to set the table. So before every meal, there she goes. I get the plates down because they're really heavy, put them on the counter, and that's it. And then she goes and takes them to the table, the glasses to the table, and then the knives and forks to the table, sets everything out.
Okay.
Make sure that there's 5 things there. There's the hot water, the hot plates, the thing for the hot plates, salt, and a few other condiments. And, then, once you've counted to 5 and you've done the 5 things or 6 things, then you're done. And, she's been doing that for years now, 2 years. And, it's just now, as soon as you got past the first week, you've got the good habit, haven't you? You've got the vibration. So therefore there's nothing to fight against anymore. It's just, oh no, I've got to do the plates. And I've got to do the plates. And, oh, please do the plates. And then, it just gets done. And, they help me, if they need a sandwich, they go do it. If they want cereal, they go do it. If they need this, that, or the other, they go do it. If they need to sharpen a pencil, they go do it. I don't get involved unless I absolutely have to, or I'm teaching them something new. So, I just find the more kids you have, the easier the life is. But, a lot of people don't look at it that way. I refuse to be a taxi driver. You either walk to your thing or you find it some other way, or you take a bus. It's London. I'm not going to be a taxi driver. I refuse. I absolutely refuse. I'll pay for it. Pay for your course, whatever it is, but, I'm not going to be a taxi driver. So, they walk to school. It's 40 minutes to school, 40 minutes back. They get to exercise. I'm still walking my 8-year-old. She wants to walk by herself, 7-year-old, but last year when she was 6, she wanted to walk by herself, but my wife wasn't that keen. So, due to the domestic discussions, I'm still doing a bit of walking, but I don't mind that. I kind of put my focus on getting some exercise too. So, it's not really a big deal, but, the bottom line is I do very, very little for them except have some fun and do a lot of tickle time with my younger one, and a lot of starting a little more with philosophy with my older one now, and concepts and ideas, because she's asking.
Right. Okay.
Not because I'm pushing it. She'll say, how do I deal with this situation with that one? And so, it's just a journey. And if you stay out the way, it's incredible what they can turn into. Absolutely incredible. Just get out of the way. It's one of the biggest advice that I give to parents.
You don't need to force them to love the things you love, right? Kind of let them be them.
Yeah.
I run into that, or I did especially run into that all the time as a youth coach. And you start to kind of look at a kid and it's like, I don't know that he wants to be out here. And this is tackle football. So you can tell when there's a kid who's not having a good time. And it's like,
Who's
hey,
doing it for their parents and not for themselves.
right. And it's like, Dad, this is putting him at a much higher risk than letting him stay at home and play video games. Forcing him into this is putting him at a significantly higher risk, especially being something like football, where if you're not. You said what?
Risk for what? Higher risk. I mean, what kind of risk are we talking about here?
Injury risk.
Oh, let me, I guess, preface American football. So when we're talking about,
that's dangerous, is it?
Yes, when we're talking about playing American football and you don't want to be out there, you're kind of just a target. So
okay.
All
right, so you're talking about physical injury. Okay.
Yes, we are talking about
you were talking about. Yeah.
Physical
I was wondering
risk.
if there was an emotional, psychological risk you were factoring in. I was just curious.
So the emotional, psychological risk comes after the physical. So a lot of that physical risk that's involved, because that kid may be scared in the moment, and obviously that fear isn't great, and we may call that trauma, we may call that character building. It kind of depends on how scared the kid is and how they bounce back from it. The biggest thing is, if you're out on a football field kind of just standing there, you are at risk to get basically laid out by somebody who's not intending on slowing down just because you're nervous. So when you put a kid out there who doesn't want to be out there, and you can see that he's not willing to go make contact with anybody, you've got to start looking at the parents going, this is dangerous for him to just stand there in a full contact sport where people are trying to tackle, run him over, get around, do kind of whatever physically that they have to advance the ball. It's very physically dangerous for you to throw him out here when he doesn't want to be out here, because he's not looking around. He's not making on-field decisions. He's basically waiting to get hit. And so that is, I mean, just the physical risk of that is pretty high. If you stand there and wait for an impact, your likelihood of injury is significantly higher than if you were the one making the contact. So that's where a lot of the biggest physical risk comes for that. As far as psychological risk, the main thing that you end up seeing is kids who don't speak, right? So kind of like when your daughter came home. You said what?
Do you come across that often?
More often than I'd prefer. More often than I'd prefer, 100%. Basically what that looks like is a kid gets so used to.
I'm just curious because in my world, I don't come across any of those kids. It just doesn't exist.
So it's something that I've run into specifically with kind of dealing with dads on the football field and on the basketball field, kind of getting really, really intense about youth sports. So it's just this kind of ideal. So
they're shutting down to protect themselves, basically.
Exactly. If they understand that every time they say something to you, it's going to cause them a severe problem, they're just going to stop talking to you. They're not going to have honest or open conversations with you. They're not going to tell you how they're really feeling. So it puts me in a position as the coach where I've got to pull him off the field. The parent's mad, saying, hey, why is my son not playing? And it's like, your son's a great kid, but this is risky for him to be out here and not want to be out here.
Can you be direct enough with the parents and say it's really your problem, it's really your fault that the kids like this?
I have become more direct with parents over the years. I'll say when I first started out, I was very generous about it.
Mm.
And then after a while, it was just like, okay, you're putting an 8-year-old at risk here for your vicarious dreams of playing professional football through this 8-year-old.
Mm.
The statistical likelihood that he ends up playing professional football is very, very low. A lot of coaching 10-year-olds to play football is more about life coaching and coaching them to handle problems than it is knowing every little nitty-gritty detail of the game of football. And so in those instances, it's just like we've got to be able to kind of pull those dads back and say we're going to run into a much larger problem than we can run into a solution or a successful outcome with doing this sort of deal.
Mm.
Right? This may have a 5% success rate, but it's got a 95% failure rate.
Do you
So what
often
is
sit the parents down with the kid and have a four-way discussion?
it's often just me and the parent. At a certain point I've noticed with those parents, it's like their willingness to talk over their child while I'm trying to talk to the child is pretty high. As weird as that sounds, I think that may be something that we deal with more in the States here. But the amount of times that I've asked an 8-year-old something like, hey, are you hurt? Are you feeling any sharp pain? Or I've watched kids get hit and it's like, okay, well, we need to go do concussion testing on them. And then they've got mom or dad on the sidelines yelling, hey, don't be soft, be tough, get back in there. What are you doing? It's like, he could have CTE here. This is something we need to slow down and talk about.
Mm.
And the more you put your kid through those scenarios where they're having injuries and you're not slowing down to talk about it, the less likely they are to talk to you in general. The more likely they are to feel like they've got to go problem solve by themselves.
It's really good.
So I would say that's kind of the main thing you run into, especially with kind of the American sport parents every now and again. It's like
that's really pointing to something too, isn't it? It's pointing to not just how they're interacting with and treating their kid in the sports environment, but it's probably carrying over to other areas of their lives.
Especially at home. This is one of the things that I've noticed. It's like if I'm watching one of my kids get yelled at on the sideline loud enough for the other team to hear it, I'm not imagining he had a fun day going home after the game.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is about, you're shutting him down more than you're inspiring him to be better. And until we can really kind of like you were saying, Louis, until we can focus on the things that you want to focus on, instead of just screaming at him that he messed up and you're focusing on all of these negatives. Well, now you have a child that's willing to shut down, is not willing to communicate with you. You're going to have a very hard time progressing that child. And even worse, now that you've kind of set yourself up where you're up against each other, now you've kind of got to have this internal war in your own household from now up until that kid moves out.
The confrontational relationship.
A very confrontational relationship. So a lot of why I got started in doing what I do now was just understanding these sorts of things aren't beneficial. And I think for those parents specifically, the amount of potential between you and your child is ridiculous. Like the things that kid could go do are insane. If you keep this up, we're not going to find out what any of those things are. If they think they've got to live your life instead of theirs, we are not going to see any of that potential. We're not going to see any of the brilliance that you talk about. We're not going to see any of it.
Outside their influence.
So what was that? I'm sorry.
I said until they're outside that influence.
Basically.
Which may be running away from home or going to the army or just to get away from the parents instead of following their career path. They're doing it to run away.
I'm curious,
Right.
Austin, how do the parents that you explain this to, how do they respond?
So sometimes a little bit angry. I've definitely had the main response, are you telling me how to parent my child?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm glad we
On
locked
this
in.
subject, in this area.
Glad we locked in on that. Yeah, it's one of those things where you've got to kind of deal with those emotions, but also be willing to have a conversation with the parent and say, hey, is what you're doing working the way that you want it to?
Good question.
No, it's not working. Okay. If we keep doing the thing that's not working, is it ever going to work? No, it's never going to work, right? We're doing the same things. So after you kind of have that conversation where you say, hey, this hasn't worked. If you keep doing it, is it going to work? And then you're just kind of staring, waiting. That is the planned awkward silence, right? So before I even ask that question, I know me and you, we're gonna sit and stare at each other for maybe 15 to 20 seconds and nobody's gonna say anything while you're sitting there thinking, did he really just say that to me? Yes, I did. That's not the point of contention. The point of contention is why you're getting this agitated with an 8-year-old playing basketball. Right? The 8-year-old is not the point of contention. You are. Another awkward pause. Right? So these aren't very comfortable conversations. But a lot of the times I just end up thinking about at this point, one of the many kids I have now in my past coaching who's now bigger, stronger, and faster than I am. And in those situations, it's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna let you be mad at me for a month. We can go back and forth, whatever. If it's gonna make the next 6 years better for him, you can be mad at me for a month. That's fine. That is something I'm willing to accept to move us forward here.
Austin, I'm loving what you're saying here, and I'm loving the way this conversation has gone between the two of you here, because I really wanted to hear this. We are kind of running low on time, and I want to get one other question in there. You basically, you provide essentially a coaching service to,
Yes.
primarily to parents, especially to dads. And there's a decent chance somewhere along the line here, someone's going to hear this and say, I should probably reach out to this Austin cat because he's probably got something to teach me. How do they find you?
So Instagram and LinkedIn are probably the two social medias that I use the most. I've got also an application link that's in both Instagram and LinkedIn. It's just an easy place to get in contact with me. Let me know what you're thinking ahead of time so I can make sure that I'm providing what I need to for you. And I think a lot of the things we talked about today maybe would suggest that, hey, as your trainer, as your coach, I need to know more about you than you know about me in a sense, right? I need to know what you like, what's going to work for you to make sure we put together your correct plan.
Louis, last thoughts here before we wind up for the day?
Have fun.
Always.
Don't take life too seriously. Have fun.
I like that.
Yeah. That's good. Because that is what the other side is doing. They're taking life far too seriously.
Very much so.
Yeah. Austin, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. I'm sure this is not quite what you expected it was going to be, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a good time.
It was a good time. I enjoyed it. I had a good time.
Maybe even learn something. Who knows? That'd be cool too. But the main thing is you had a good time, and that's really the biggest part. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining
having you on, Austin.
Really, really good.
Love being here. Thank you for teaching me about the law of attraction, kind of in its more correct sense than
you must welcome. It's well worth the visit.
And I also want to tell you something that I've made a practice now to tell to our guests who are doing work like you're doing, that's such important work. Besides the people that you work with directly, there are many people whom you've never met, who you've never seen. They've perhaps seen you on a podcast, or they saw something you wrote somewhere, or they heard about something you did with a kid or something like that. And you touch their lives in ways that you never heard about. and you never knew, and you never will know about it because that's just the way that the modern world works. But I think we also need to appreciate that. So on their behalf, I want to thank you for what you've done for those people that you'll never meet and that you'll never see, and to thank you for the work you're going to continue to do on behalf of those people that you've never met and that you'll never see.
Well, you're welcome, guys. If you need anything, I'll be here.
Take
All
care,
right.
listeners.
That's the goal.
All right. Sounds good.
Take care, listeners.
Thank you very much. See you all next time. And by the way, thank you to the listeners who've been sending in emails to me, wishing me well. I appreciate those as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.